Hi, everybody. This is the African Actions Network radio and television station. I'm James N. Jensen. I'm here sitting this morning. Well, we are here for a short time because of some personal engagement. But let me say Merry Christmas to most of you who are Christians and those of you who are not Christians but will be celebrating with your children, your family. We want to say have a pleasant and a wonderful season. No matter the situation, the conditions, we want to say God is in control. And so be thankful, be gracious, and live one day at a time. It doesn't matter the situation, it could change one day. So we want to say Merry Christmas. Okay, while we are wishing you Merry Christmas, we want you to join us, share the video, make a comment. We want to discuss just for a while, about 30 minutes. We want to talk a little bit about the just ended US Africa Summit in Washington, D.C. That's important to Africa and to the world. What was the purpose of that conference? What were some of the dividends that those African leaders that left Africa and came to the West, came to America, came to Washington, D.C.? What did they take back home? Who do you think make the most presidential, forceful, appealing, and persuasive statement in Washington, D.C.? Give us a view, make a comment. We'll be glad to read your comments. Once again, I'm James Jensen. I'm sitting right here in Pennsylvania. The conference has ended, and most of our leaders have returned to their respective countries, especially on the continent of Africa. The conference had a purpose. And most of us who follow global development, you would have known that America is concerned about democracy around the world. And because of that great desire, America is believing that Africans shouldn't be let alone. They should get involved. They should be on the path of democracy. And in my view, that was the most singular reason why the US Africa Summit was held. And if most of you missed that mark, I want you to rethink, why was that summit called in the first place? And this is where we come to make some analysis from our own point as a communicator. There is a global effort to democratize the world, or to urge those democratic nations to remain on the path of democracy. Africa, there are greater concern as to China's influence on the continent of Africa. Russia's attempt to move into Africa. In those decisions, America believe that protecting democracy is a very significant part. And that's the singular reason, in my view, that this summit was called. Joe Biden presidency, in my view, Africa or African leaders can have a better relationship with America in this time, in this age. And I can say this without fear or favor, that Joe Biden presidency is keeping the world kind today. If we just take our eyes from Africa and go towards let's say, what is happening in Ukraine. The decision of America today is helping to protect the lives of those people who found themselves, not by choice, but by creation, in that part of the world. And thousands of them are dying from the bullet. Let me say that I'm going back to Africa, but let me say this. If you hear a Ukrainian is putting seeds, flower seeds in his pocket to go at the war front and telling his people that assuming I don't come back, wherever you see the flower seed grows, get reminded it is me. That's a patriotic voice. That's something that when you listen to, you don't have to be a Ukrainian. You don't have to be of their colors. But you realize that nations must get more serious. That's the message. Africa has lived with age like other nations. African nations, most of them became independent than some of these well-developed countries today. What is happening in Africa? There's massive poverty in Africa, massive suffering. Conditions are not favorable to Africans. And there are leaders, year in, year out, different kinds of leaders. Educated persons becoming president, less educated persons becoming president, military leaders becoming leaders on the continent of Africa. But yet, Africa cannot even feed her own citizens. They are begging every day. Now, the summit, our focus of discussion. The summit has ended. We're going to be discussing the summit in parts continuously. This is just to introduce what we might be doing. In fact, tomorrow we'll be talking about President Weah, Liberia's involvement into the summit, George Weah's visit outside of Liberia to other part of the world, and then coming to Washington, D.C. and going back to Liberia. We're going to be discussing some of the details of George Weah's delivery. What did he tell African leaders in the West about what is happening in Liberia? What message he brought and what message he took back? We're going to be looking at that hopefully by tomorrow. But on the summary note, let's look at what Joe Biden has promised Africa. And what do we think those promises will be to Africa? What are some of the benefits? Are African leaders going to take advantage of whatever going to Africa? Well, let me say this. There are a lot of monetary promises on the continent of Africa from the current government. Joe Biden is more interested. We realized that out of the conference or the summit, he spoke to different African leaders in parts. He spoke to those who he believes will be having elections next year. And those persons, he's interested in ensuring that there is free, fair, transparent elections from those countries. So he spoke to them. Therefore, America promises to ensure that that process of conducting elections is supported. So we believe that America will support elections in Africa. But besides the elections, but let me say this before I move forward. With elections expected, we know that USAID is responsible to ensure the distribution of funds to needed individuals, institutions that will buttress America's effort in ensuring free, fair, transparent elections and democracy. So the money being promised to Africa, in my view, are not for budgetary support for those countries. The money will be used for its intended purpose. And guess what? Those who are managing projects that will help America achieve its goal in how they want to get into Africa, those institutions and individuals will benefit from promises from Joe Biden and the United States government. So let's say, for example, Liberia. Liberia election is next year. Those who are going to be getting involved, let's say institutions or individuals who are going to be, for example, monitoring elections and don't have the resources and will write projects, I'm sure USAID going to support those kinds of projects. Those who want to ensure that there are better political organizations, not necessarily political parties, whatever civil society organizations exist in Liberia to promote democracy, I'm very sure they will get the benefit. They will enjoy some of the promises coming from the US government. That's one aspect of it. But let's look into some of the financial things that Joe Biden, we think that Joe Biden will be looking at or has promised. Joe Biden investment of nearly $1.2 billion in Africa is all about helping Africa's democracy, as I said earlier. Okay? Working with Congress to invest $350 billion to facilitate almost $500 million in financing to make sure people across Africa can participate in the digital economy. Now, that's a new word. There's a global effort everywhere around the world. Today's world is different from yesterday. Technology is a factor. Whether you know it or not, people are concerned. Internet, people talking about cables, I'm not in those areas. But I know that for the continent of Africa, there are what they call several cables or whatever you call it that are underwater. How those things are going to work, how they're going to transform those things to new technological advantage or development that can help a better internet delivery in that part of the world. Those who in those areas will benefit from all of the negotiation between the US President and Congress. Whatever they're going to be sending out there, they are intended to help Africa in a larger way. So what are you doing as an African leader if you came to the summit and you are returned back to your country? What are you looking at? What is it that you even have told your people that this is what America is expected to have to deliver to us? The money may not come to you directly as a government, but you should be telling your people that there are opportunities coming to the continent. What do we benefit from? Okay, so there's a projection that the United States government is going to be investing about $370 million in new projects. What those projects are, they will be tailored. Now you have the U.S. ambassador, for example, Liberia has U.S. ambassador sitting right there. They have USAID, they have different operatives that have the opportunity to deliver or to ensure that projects are given to individuals and institutions that can help expand America's ideas on democracy in that part of the world. So if you do not understand these things and you probably had an opportunity to listen to the US-Africa Summit or you attended it and you don't have the idea of even telling your people, this is what we expect. So embrace yourself for this opportunity. Begin to write projects. Those of you who are involved in the different organizations, democracy, elections, there will be so much money to Africa. If you are involved in those places, in those things, you might just get benefit from some of the promises that come from America. So leaders that came from the conference should be telling their people. I'm sure that there were some behind the scene discussions, but these are key issues. We are hearing that about 100 million will be increased, will be part of the package to ensure clean energy for millions of people in the sub-Saharan Africa. That's another issue. People want to come from fossil fuel to clean energy and whatever you think. Now, let's be mindful. If you think, I mean, I've heard the argument. Some African leaders are even saying, hey, wait a minute, we cannot quickly get out of using this, let's say, fuel, gasoline, or what you call it, to straight clean energy. That is like, that would disadvantage us because I think Africa is just starting to maximize fuel production or whatever you may call it. So then how do the transition take place? America believes that, look, to save the world, we must use clean energy. And how that's going to happen? They're going to be sending money in those directions. And those who are involved in the process, in ensuring that the dream of America comes true, the money will be used for those persons or those institutions that will be fighting in those directions. We are hearing that 20 million will be provided for financing for fertilizer to help smallholder farmers, to help farmers. So that's about $20 million for fertilizer. I mean, that goes far beyond African, especially like, for example, I'm from Africa. I know the type of farming people do in Africa. People don't use fertilizer, right? Maybe the soil alone is good. It also depends on the mindset of, for example, the agriculture ministry in Liberia. If there will be so much fertilizer, what can Liberia do to benefit from these millions of dollars? Maybe private organizations. Like, for example, we are hearing there's a private person in Lofa County that is producing rice on a larger scale. These persons may just be, because if you write a very good project proposal to get involved in small-scale farming, I'm sure this can have a benefit. But it also depends on the leadership that country has. If your country has been described as being very corrupt, trust me, the focus of those who are going to be distributing the money may not be to your country. You must be appealing. You must be someone who will always stand in a position to convince those partners. You must have a representative that will make a case. If you can, all the money will come and go and your country will not get anything. All right. We are hearing that there's a 10 million to support small and medium-sized enterprises to bring clean drinking water to communities all across the continent. That's one aspect. $10 million. Well, Liberia, we don't know. Probably maybe the LEC or I don't know, whoever that's gearing towards that end of electricity or clean drinking water, to say so to speak, they will have to make a case. America will have all the money. Maybe USA will have a lot over there. It depends on what kind of project and the individuals involved, whether they can be trusted in the first place before money can be given to them. These are issues that Liberia should be thinking about too, as African in general, we're supposed to be thinking about. All right. We are hearing that there will be some for the next 5 years, there'll be something like 600 billion, selectively for the continent. So whatever that's going to be, as I said earlier, it depends on the country, it depends on the leaders, it depends on those who will get involved in understanding that the aid or the existing are going to Africa, they will take advantage of it. But if the people know that very well that, look, we give somebody X amount of dollar, that dollar is not going to yield anything, They cannot even manage their own resources. So to give them money directly, it's going to be difficult. Now, for example, budgetary support. I'm not sure from what I'm hearing from Joe Biden, there was any pronouncement as to budgetary support to a country. No. So don't get it wrong. If America has promised X amount of dollar, it's strictly for a purpose, and America has institutions on the ground in almost every African country. And I know that USAID is a key institution that will always manage US dollars. So you have to convince those persons before you can be considered. Now, the government, for example, the government should be telling, for example, in the area of agriculture, in the area of electricity, clean drinking water, all of those things, those agencies responsible must be now people to have individuals well trusted to manage sources, to write projects on behalf of government and be able to appeal to the country, the US, so that those agencies on the ground, US agencies on the ground, will see the face of the individual in a ministry or agency. It will be say, okay, we can trust to put some money here, we can get the needed result. All right. In addition to what we are hearing is that the US will commit an additional $2.5 billion across Africa in just the next 3 years. So the next 3 years, there's about what we're hearing, $2.5 billion will go towards Africa. So you see the money is breaking down in different aspects. So there's so much money that will be going to Africa, trillions of dollars will be going to Africa. And you don't make a case, you don't have the right leaders, trust me, you're not going to benefit from these US gestures. Until you have people that you trust. Now, for example, Liberia going for election next year. So they say in the next 3 years, there'll be some $2.5 billion going towards Africa. There are conditions attached to this money. You don't just hear the money and say, oh yeah, thank God we're coming to get money. No. These people, the president made the pronouncement, they are implementers, they are people who are responsible to ensure that, is that when the president speaks, the people pick up the pieces and begin to work on it. You don't just say, okay, we're sending $2.5 billion in Africa, then you think it's just a magic, that anybody just go and ask for it. Those conditions you must meet those conditions. All right? Also, we are hearing that America is going to invest about $500 million to build and maintain roads. Now, those are critical issues. You can't sit and say, well, this is what they're going to do. The people know, now I'm talking about Africa, not talking about a specific country. So you must be one of those countries that will be convincing. You must be convincing. How you manage your own resources will determine whether in fact they can give you any money. I'm sure they're not going to give government cash. But if government has a project, United States government, you say, can go in there and finance it and make sure they get the needed result. So these are issues, as I said, we're going to be discussing these in full detail as we move ahead, in the next few days. Tomorrow we want to look at Liberia, the president of Liberia, leaving Liberia, coming outside of that country, and what did he say to other leaders at the summit, and what did he take back home? We're going to be looking at his statements and some of his visits. Right? So tomorrow morning we'll get our time towards that. But today we just want to look at the US government. Now, Joe Biden is supposed to be visiting Africa. He did not say specifically which African country you're going to visit. And it is also not possible that Joe Biden will visit all of the countries in Africa. So, which African country do you think Joe Biden is going to visit? I don't know. But we got to be thinking about it, right? Now, if an African leader was very impressive at the conference, very likely Joe Biden wanted to go there. But if he did not make a case sufficient, if you were not convincing, if he did not make any impressive or persuasive statement, I'm not sure whether Joe Biden is going to pay attention. Now, that's a presidential decision with Joe Biden to decide which African country you're going to visit. We don't have control over that. But we can say, just from our view, There are a few countries that Joe Biden want to go to. I can leave out South Africa. South Africa may be one of the countries you want to visit. Kenya may be one of the countries you want to visit. Ghana may be one of the countries you want to visit. Liberia, maybe, because Liberia is blessed. You have the U.S. ambassador so forceful and want Liberia to come from its state of dormancy, what I would call dormancy. In the same vein, you have U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. She so loves Liberia, but they're not going to ignore the policy, the U.S. government policy on Africa. And where Joe Biden is supposed to go, I know there's a lot of discussion how to take place. Not an airport where, plain Lenny and yet still plain tire, not a problem. Where current will go over all those things. I know that can happen under no circumstance. That happened to the U.S. president. Now, one that plenty. We can keep our eyes on that. But I'm just saying some of the determining factors, some of the reasons why, some of the things that people will use to make a decision. Just there are people who are influenced, who can talk and convince the president to go to a specific African country. It also depends. You don't know. We heard that Joe Biden, Joe Weir was able to talk with Joe Biden. What did he say to Joe Biden? If his conversation was not very convincing, get it out. Joe Biden can come to Liberia. But let me say that from my own view, now my own judgment, and I've said that the most outstanding presidential statement, convincing statement, persuasive statement that I heard from the conference came from the Ghanaian president. He moved all black collar people. He spoke to their consciences that no matter where you come from, you are an African. The moment you have a dark skin. When I listen to him, in my view, this is not to compare him to any other person. I'm not from Ghana, but I strongly believe that was the most forceful statement at that conference, summit. And in my view, his story is sure. The Ghanaian president's story is sure. There's no one analytical person that listened to the Ghanaian president will not tell you or will not give you a word from his statement. So, these are the things we're talking about. When you go to this kind of international forum, you must make a case. You must make people to discuss what you discuss. Even when you say something that is not of interest to, the majority of leaders in that place, it's just going to be a problem for your country and your people. Nobody's going to pay attention to you anyway. Like those who are taking notes and preparing notes that will be into reports, if they don't capture statement from you, they give maybe everybody, maybe 5-10 minutes to make a presentation. You went over there. Let's say, for example, I want to talk about, my people are enjoying dual citizenship. My legislature has passed dual citizenship. What that has to do with Ghanaians, Kenyans, South Africans, Americans, right? So, if I take that statement and took the Ghanaian statement, I will also want to look at what the statement was all about, right? Somebody is first speaking. Ghanaian's president spoke, but he spoke to me directly. Likewise, right? I'm a dark-skinned person. I'm from Liberia, though. So his statement was persuasive to me that no matter where you find yourself, Africa needs to develop. No matter where you are, when you say think about Africa, it's time that people should look up to Africa too, not Africa looking up to nations all over the place. That cannot happen if you have Liberian or African electing people who are not standing up to the task. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, this is an opening of the discussion. Make a comment. We'll keep following this development. Tomorrow, we're going to be discussing specifically, we want to look at the George Weir's report to Liberia. $50 million for export. So we're going to be looking at George Weir's statement tomorrow. I don't want to give any specific here, but we're going to be looking at a statement tomorrow and some of his report to Liberians, because that's our focus while we sit here. We're looking at Africa, but we want to look at Liberia specifically tomorrow and see what we can get out of that from his statement. And because to discuss, there's one thing that if the media cannot move Liberians to make a better decision come 2023, all the money we're hearing from America and others, will just be in vain. They may not benefit substantially. They're not going to ignore, nobody's going to ignore a country, especially Liberia. Liberia is a strategic position, in my view, on the mind of Americans. But it depends on Liberians to make the right decision in having leaders that can sit on the table and discuss the issues that matter to Liberians. So tomorrow we just want to be looking at George Weah's presentation and his report from to Liberians, and whether or not his unprecedented state, whether Congress is going to be looking, whether the legislature in Liberia are going to be looking at that, or whether they just feel like, okay, there's no need to even talk about it. We're going to be looking at those things too, and then from there we're going to be keeping, we're going to keep our eyes on what is unfolding in Liberia. What you call it? What's the phrase? I'm tired of suffering, and President say, no, the people not suffering. You say you're suffering, get a big stomach, and marching ahead of the line. We're going to be looking at some of those things that maybe close to next week, but specifically tomorrow. Join us tomorrow. We'll be here discussing George Weah's report to Liberians. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. Have a pleasant and wonderful day. Again, Christmas is around the corner. Be safe. Make sure your children are safe. Just hug your kids. If you don't have the money, just hug them and say, hey, sweetheart, I love you. Make sure I'll always be there for you. This Christmas is just not easy. Just understand that. That child will understand. That child will respect you. Okay? I know the pressure is on everybody. Sometimes you look around, you don't have it. Right? Even some of us who are sitting down here, it's tough. But guess what? Life is going on. If we don't reach you this Christmas, someday we'll reach you. Or it's not lost. Keep that in mind. Thank you so much and have a pleasant and a wonderful day. Until then, I'm James Jensen, and this is the African Actions Network. Goodbye for now.